Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Mintlayer community call for the latest development update. My name is Michael Bille, and I work on the business developing at Mintlayer. And I'm here with our one and only CTO, Ben Marsh, to take you through the latest of what we have been working on. But just a quick note for the setup for this call, as we from now on will have all our calls streamed to our YouTube channel only and not on Telegram. So please remember to hit the subscribe button at our YouTube page to make sure you don't miss any calls or streams from us. But again, we will still be very active on our Telegram channel as always. It's only for our streams and calls we will use YouTube. Now that we have this settled, welcome to the call, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, today's agenda for the developing update are as follows. We have point one I have on my note here is Abu Dhabi. And then we also going to go through the mobile wallet and the web browser extension. And we will also talk about the core developing update, what we have been working on here. And of course, also what is coming next on the Mintlayer as we are getting close to the year end. So, Ben, how is everything going from your end at the moment?
I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, not too bad. Just back from Abu Dhabi, as you mentioned, where a few of us have been sat working, but we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a minute. But yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good as well. I'm still in Europe, so it's getting cold here. But yeah, soon gonna spend time with the family and Christmas things. So, but still a lot of things to work on here at Mintlayer, also from the business side. So that is super interesting. Yeah, and as you mentioned, Abu Dhabi, I know that the leading developing team was in warm, sunny Abu Dhabi last week or 2 weeks ago. Can you tell me more about the reason for Abu Dhabi and the meeting?
Yeah, sure. So there were just a few of us there. So the reason behind Abu Dhabi is because one of the development team lives there, so it just made it easier that we all went to somewhere. And why not pick somewhere where someone already lives? So we were sat looking at a few different things. One, looking at the things that are sort of the pressing issues at the moment. So we spend a lot of time looking at the consensus and these sorts of things. And it also gave us the opportunity to do a little bit of planning about what's going to be coming up next year. So we spent a lot of time looking at the Lightning Network and how we can utilize it for Mintlayer, and a lot of time looking at the smart contract stuff. And yeah, lots of planning, lots of researchy stuff, and some perhaps more development-y focused bits on the proof of stake as well.
Okay, so as I understand, it's more like the very in-depth discussion regarding the consensus and how you're gonna do that part of the work on in the future.
Yeah, so I mean, the consensus is, I mean, it's still under active development, so lots of it is sort of a solved problem at this point, but there are still a few open issues and a few things that we think that there is a nicer way to handle it. So yeah, there were just a few of us essentially locked away in a room for a week where we were able to just sit and talk about these sorts of things without being distracted by other things. So we more or less avoided all other meetings for the week and just focused on these important bits.
Oh, it's good to hear, Ben. Good to hear. Like all the smart brains can come together and work on difficult subjects. I can just share here with the community that all members of the Mintlayer team are working remotely. So we have team members in Asia, Europe, and the US. So from time to time, we will meet up in person to have like in-depth discussion on important topics, just like the ones Ben just mentioned. So yeah, it's interesting to work at Mintlayer, and now that we are at it, we are still looking for talent to join our team, especially on the developing front. Ben, maybe you can just share brief about what kind of talent and skills we are looking for.
Yeah, sure. So before I describe the roles, I'm going to say one thing, which is we do work remotely, but in order to sort of maximize the time that people are around and can interact with one another, we do aim to work Central European time-ish hours. So from about 10 a.m. Central European time till about 1, 2 in the afternoon, we call our core hours in the Rust team. So, and it's similar-ish, but pushed back slightly for the web and mobile teams. The idea being we have a period in the day where we can guarantee everyone is going to be around. So there's always essentially a guaranteed time slot where you can have a discussion with people if you have a question about their code, or you need some help, or someone wants to ask you a question, then we have this slot where everyone's around. Other than that, we try and work as asynchronously as possible, but it's nice to have this sort of guaranteed overlap every day. So we have the main role we're still looking to hire for is the Rust blockchain engineer. So first and foremost, we're looking for Rust skills. So someone who has a couple of years of Rust experience is great. Someone who comes from, say, a C++ background, something like this, and has a year or so of Rust is also generally pretty good. I would love to say someone who is both amazingly skilled at both Rust and blockchain, but those people are few and far between. I mean, they're both relatively new things. Rust is a relatively new language. Blockchain's a relatively new field. So people who are skilled at both are generally sort of almost unicorns. They're quite rare, quite difficult to come across. So what we do is we have a defined process for onboarding people. So good, solid Rust developers. We have it's a well-trodden track at this point. So we have done this before. We know how to onboard people to blockchain and how to teach from our code base and the basics of blockchain so they can become productive in our code base. So yeah, that's the most important thing, is that you're a good, bright Rust developer. We are also hiring for the web and mobile teams, but perhaps slightly less actively. So people who are good React Native developers, for example, for the mobile stuff, and people who are good React developers for the web stuff. We are actively hiring for those. So we have lots of blockchain related things, obviously. So the mobile wallet is entirely blockchain related. The web stuff is most of it's blockchain related. The launch side, of course, is slightly less blockchain related. But so it's not as essential for people to have blockchain experience, but an interest in blockchain is certainly very useful, because there is still a lot to learn if you don't come from that field. But yeah, realistically, good Rust developers and React Native developers are what we're actively hiring for at the moment. I will also say that if there isn't an open role, but you think there is something you could give to the Mintlayer project, be that from a security perspective or something that we just haven't thought about yet, then we're always willing to have a look at your application. You can apply on the website, and yeah, we're always happy to take a look and have a chat with you and see if there's something we can work out.
Thank you very much for sharing for these things, Ben, and hopefully some of our community member themselves or know somebody who are working with these skills. So yeah, let them guide them into our website and reach out to us if interesting. So yeah, cool. Let's move on now. Let's dive into the developing update, Ben. You guys have continued the work with the Mojito wallets. We both have the mobile wallet and also working on the web browser extension. But let's start with the Mojito mobile wallet. I know there have been some security updates and improvement to some of the tests, as you also mentioned last month. Can you please tell us more about the latest development on this?
Yeah, so there's been a few things going on. So as you mentioned, there have been a few small security updates, mainly relating to external libraries we use. So these aren't necessarily issues in the app itself, but in code that we use from other people. So there's been a few little bits there that have been fixed. Testing, obviously, we're continuing to build a large functional test framework around the mobile app. So this is still taking up a fair amount of time because essentially we built this from nothing. The idea being, I mean, I've sort of described this before, but the idea being we have the ability to test the app from end to end as part of a development process. So one, we can catch issues earlier, and secondly, when we add new code, we'll be able to see if we have broken anything else in the process accidentally. So there are a few other bits that have been going on in the background as well. So first and foremost, we have been working on the new features for the mobile app to some extent. So I've mentioned these before, particularly the entropy generation. And we have also been looking at the feedback we had for the browser extension. So we had an awful lot of feedback from the community for the browser extension. And we have been looking at what feedback there also applies to the mobile app and what we can take into consideration now and maybe do short term and what we should change long term. So the idea is that the browser extension, the mobile wallet, will be as close to one product as possible. So the interface will be similar between the two. You'll be able to do exactly the same things. So the feedback we got from the browser extension, not all of it applies, obviously, but an awful lot of it is something we can take under consideration for the mobile app as well.
That's sweet to hear, especially that you want to like create it as close to one product as possible. Also make it much more user friendly for the users to use these wallets. Absolutely. As you mentioned, we got a bunch of alpha testers from our great community. More than 250 participated in the testing, and we got more than 40 provided their valued feedback to us to work on. Can you give an update about the testing and the work being done here for the browser extension?
Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned, we got 40, 50 bits of feedback in the end. So there's been a lot to go through. So some of the things we had to verify how it actually happens in real life, these sorts of things. So it's been not the world's quickest process to actually go through all of this feedback we got. And then it's been a case of trying to triage this. So what is important for us to fix now? What are we going to do in the future? What is perhaps not valid? So not everything that we received is valid, obviously. So there's been a lot of time spent going back and forth over what we should focus on now. And we are in the process of just fixing up those last few bits of the user sort of advice and what they felt we should focus on. And yeah, so we have a working version internally, sorry. So yeah, we're slowly fixing those last few bits, and it's more or less done at the moment. So there has been some. I mean, the most important bit I think is that we've been, or the most noticeable perhaps for the users, is we've been working on the connectivity stuff. So introducing some nice error messages for when the connectivity issues happen, these sorts of things. So if the backend goes down, what happens on the user side? So we had a lot of feedback around surrounding this sort of issue. So it's something that's been going on a lot. And then there's been some form validation fixes and yeah, lots of little bits.
Yeah, good to hear. But Ben, I really have to ask you, when do you think we are ready to launch the browser extension? Do you have any estimation?
So the idea is that assuming nothing else crops up, the user feedback should be finished in this sprint. So realistically, we're looking at next week sometime. So before Christmas is the aim.
So before Christmas. It sounds good. It sounds good. We are just very curious, and I know a lot of the community at the Telegram are asking for this one. So
essentially, it's ready to go, but we're trying to sort as much of the feedback from the public as possible before we do it. So there were lots of things that were sort of suggested from the public, which were not things we had thought about before. And we have taken these things into consideration. We decided some of it is not necessarily essential to fix before we go live, but useful. I mean, we had lots of good feedback, so as fixing it as much of it as possible before we go live is the best way to approach this, I think.
yeah, I agree on that one. It's always good to launch a quality product instead of just a quick, fast one, but then take your time and use the qualitative feedback from the community and really do a proper and quality product.
Yeah, I stand by taking your time and doing something properly is the best way to approach this. So there's no point us release. I mean, particularly, I mean, we're handling people's money here realistically. I mean, so someone moves Bitcoin onto the app, their money it's there realistically. So we want this to one be as easy to use as possible, but also to be as secure and safe as possible. And sometimes that means taking a little bit more time than we had originally anticipated. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody understand that we want the security to be number one priority because we all have our money on the Mojito wallet. So of course we take your time and make sure everything goes smooth and work properly. So that's good to hear. And another thing I want to add about to ask you about the web browser extension, also the hardware wallet integration. Do you have any news about this?
Yeah, so this is something we have spoken about briefly in the past, and it is still something we intend to do. We have done the sort of preliminary planning for how to do this, but with the user feedback, our sort of priorities have been shifted slightly, and we have moved on to doing slightly more pressing things, I suppose. So this is something we will come back to in the near future. We're essentially ready to go with this work. And in fact, there may have even been some of the preliminary work done. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but I think there may have been. But the planning sort of stuff has already been done for sure. So yeah, it will happen essentially as soon as the next few bits. So the sort of user feedback and probably the entropy generation. As soon as that's sorted, we will move on to the hardware wallet stuff.
Perfect. Great, Ben. And again, I'll just say to the community that we really appreciate the support from you guys. And again, you can hear from Ben that your feedback and your testing, alpha testing, has really helped us a lot and to improve our product for you guys. So again, thank you so much for involving and supporting us. Ben, next on my list is core development. So please let's go there. Can you take us through these development? I know there's different points here.
Yeah, so I mean, we should probably start with proof of stake. So I've already sort of briefly mentioned this. So there has been lots more work on proof of stake, both looking at the accounting stuff, which will be used for paying out block rewards and these sorts of things, and also on more generically on the security aspects of proof of stake. So this is one of the things we were looking at when we were in Abu Dhabi. So proof of stake is moving along slowly but surely, as I think the best way to phrase it. So perhaps slowly but surely is not fair. It's moving on at a fair pace. And again, we're perhaps taking our time a little bit here because we're ensuring that we do things properly, and we are testing every possible edge case, and we are verifying that things are mathematically provably secure as we go. So we don't want to just take a leap of faith and assume something is correct. We want to prove it as we go. So there's been lots of other smaller bits going on. So the database backend is finished now and is completely merged. There may be some more work on the LMDB library in the near future. So we fixed some more issues in it over the last month, and it's likely there'll be some more work there, either cleaning up those fixes or we might run into some more issues there. Remains to be seen exactly what's involved there, but yeah. So there's lots of testing going on there at the moment. Lots and lots of testing. P2P, we've been doing lots of work on the networking stuff. We're moving towards dropping libp2p as a dependency. So we have run into a bunch of issues with it, and we've essentially decided we will take the core ideas from it, and those bits that are easy to implement ourselves, we will implement ourselves. So we will essentially put the onus on ourselves to maintain it in the future, and we won't be reliant on other people. So at first it was okay, and it's used by some other big cryptocurrency projects. So we kind of took a leap of faith to some extent, and we've run into a few issues now. So we've decided we're essentially going to go off on our own route. Yeah. The other big thing there's been a lot to work on is the wallet. So this is going to be the command line wallet to start with, at least, which will be used for staking and these sorts of things. So there's been work on that and the key derivation stuff and seed phrases, derivation paths, all that sort of stuff that comes with a wallet has been going on. I should say we will release a GUI wallet at some point as well. So there will be a user interface for staking these sorts of things. But to start with, we're working on the simplest version, because once that's working, we can work on the more interesting, complicated bits. And there's been a few small changes to the mempool again. And in fact, this is going to be something that changes a lot over the next month or so as well.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Always new changing to the mempool update every month. It's great. It's just like it's a developing update thing. It's just like the mempool, always like the last thing to be mentioned.
Yeah. So the mempool, essentially what we did was we took the sort of idea for the mempool from Bitcoin, and we're now doing two things. One is fully integrating it with the rest of the software. So it means every time we create something else in another subsystem within our software, or we change something, that we have to go back to the mempool and change that slightly or add new features to it and these sorts of things. And also, although we took the idea from Bitcoin, there are a few things that we've been able to do slightly more nicely than how it was implemented in Bitcoin. So it's kind of a slow, ongoing process of proving it out as we go as well. So we'll make small incremental changes, prove that we haven't done anything weird, and yeah, then we can move on to the next bits. So the mempool, realistically, for the time being, it's probably going to be, I think it's going to be fairly ubiquitous in the development updates.
Yeah, it's good to hear. So we'll talk about it again next month. So that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that was like for the developing update, Ben. Thank you for that. What about the expectation for December month? Do you have any exciting thing working on now to the end of year?
So, I mean, as we kind of hinted at, I mean, we didn't even hint at it. We explicitly said earlier that the browser extension should be released before the end of the year. So we are just fixing the last few little bits now. So I would expect that to come before the end of the year. The mobile wallet, we will be focusing. I mean, the testing is more or less done at this point. So there we will be looking at finishing the features that we had started there. So the entropy generation stuff and the multi-sig stuff. With the core, the mempool, there's going to be a lot of work there. So one of the members of the team is doing a lot of work there at the moment. And there's going to be lots of work on the networking and proof of stake stuff, realistically. So they're going to be the big key areas over the next month or so. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you, Ben. I think that is what we have for the development update this time. But Ben, now I have you here. I want to ask you. Enrico and I spoke about the current market situation after the FTX collapse. It was like 2 weeks ago. We talked about that, and also the importance of holding your own private key to bitcoins and tokens. And now this Monday, BlockFi filed for bankruptcy. I'm just curious to hear like your thought about what's happening on the market this month, if you have any, if you are like interested in the market or you're just busy building Mintlayer.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I pay attention to it. It's I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, obviously, it's sad to see people lose money. Some people will have lost a lot of money. Some people will have lost money that they can't afford to have lost. It's going to impact a lot of people's lives, some of which will be quite dramatic. At the same time, I don't think it's overly sad to see unsustainable businesses fail. And if I'm completely honest, the sooner the better. I mean, if your business is, if it can't sustain itself, then it should probably disappear. It's only going to get worse over time if it continued to work. More people would have invested, more people would have lost money. So cleaning the market, so to speak, is probably a good thing. As yeah, I mean, I guess I have mixed feelings about it. Yeah. What about you? How do you feel about the market?
Yeah, I totally agree on what you're saying here. Like it's so sad to read about all the retailers like losing their investment, and some are like putting all their family money or life saving into these huge company who we all thought we could trust, but then they're just like gambling away the invested money from the retailers. So I'm really sad from the retailer's view of point, but I'm kind of finally, let's just get all these rotten companies bankrupt so we can like build Bitcoin and the future blockchain, which actually have value to it, and build healthy companies around it, instead of what we have seen now, where just like they're gambling the retailers' money. So yeah, mixed feelings here as well. But I'm afraid that this might not be the end, because the contagion still rolls from the FTX, and now it's BlockFi. Then is it over now? I don't know. But again, I'll just like really highlight to our community, please take good care of your investments and your Bitcoins, and yeah, hold your private key is the most secure thing you can do. So that's from my end.
Yeah, self-custody is definitely the way to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all we have time for today. And to all of you who joined us out there, thank you very much for your support. We truly value this. And please remember to join our official Telegram channel. We are very active here, and we'll answer all your questions. And again, TGE is getting closer. Please keep an eye on our updates, and we'll get some news for you very soon. Ben, as always, appreciate your time and your hard work. Thank you so much for joining and share your current status of the development.
Thank you for having me.
I am Michael Bille. Thank you very much for joining us on this community call.